The 2000s and 10s. They still feel like yesterday, yet they've already become part of history. A decade in which the world changed rapidly. Britain voted for Brexit. America elected Donald Trump. Max Verstappen became Formula One's youngest ever Grand Prix winner, while London hosted the Olympic Games. We stopped watching television and started binge-watching Netflix. CDs made way for Spotify, while vinyl completed its remarkable comeback. And before we knew it, smartphones had taken over our lives. But we're not here to talk about any of that, because we're only in it for the music. Welcome back to the 10 Essential Debut Album series. Today we arrive at the most recent decade we'll be covering, for now. This first episode on the 2010s marks the end of our journey through the decades, but certainly not the end of the series. Next, we'll jump back in time and begin our second pass, starting with the second half of the 1960s. We'll revisit every decade once again until we've ranked all the essential debut albums. And by the time we finally get there, the Roaring 20s will probably be over as well, giving us another decade to look back on. If you're new to the channel and wondering how these rankings are determined, every album is judged on the quality of its individual songs, along with a score for the sound, the sequence, and the album's sleeve. A little thing I like to call the triple S factor.
It's a thing.
It's not a thing. Anyway, let's get started. We open this list with the British alt-rock band Alt-J. Some music critics describe their sound as indie, but to be honest, that label has never meant much to me. I think of them as an alt-rock band. Looking at the track list, the album opens with a song simply called Intro, followed by Interlude 1. Although Intro turns out to be a fully fledged song in its own right, An Awesome Wave doesn't exactly get off to an explosive start. Interestingly, the album features no fewer than 3 interludes. Each serves a different purpose. The first is primarily vocal, the second revolves around an acoustic guitar, and the third is a short piano piece. Individually, they're pleasant atmospheric moments, but within the context of the album, they feel more like unnecessary interruptions. That said, the production is excellent throughout. And if you happen to enjoy Joe Newman's distinctive and unconventional vocal style, then An Awesome Wave is a remarkably strong and highly enjoyable debut album from a great indie, alt-rock band. At number 9, we find James Blake's self-titled debut album. Atmospheric electronics are interwoven with understated piano ballads, while Blake's fragile voice remains the emotional centerpiece throughout. The musical backdrop is minimalist, intimate, and at times almost deliberately clinical, giving every note and every moment of silence added weight. Following this debut, James Blake would become one of the most influential artists and producers of his generation. But the outlines of that extraordinary talent are already unmistakably present on this remarkable first album. At number 8, we find Kendrick Lamar's debut album, Section 80. Surprisingly, the album remains relatively unknown to many music fans. It was released only on CDR, while the numerous vinyl editions in circulation are unofficial pressings. As a result, many people assume that Good Kid, M.A.A.D. City was Kendrick's debut. An understandable mistake, since that was the album that launched him onto the world stage and immediately established him as one of hip-hop's most exciting new voices. But Section 80 already showcases an impressively broad musical palette. Soul, R&B, and subtle jazz influences blend effortlessly with crisp hip-hop beats, over which Kendrick delivers his now unmistakable flow. If this album proves one thing, it's just how extraordinary Kendrick Lamar already was at the very beginning of his career. And the best was still yet to come. We're only at number 7, and this list has already taken us in every musical direction imaginable, from alt-rock to electronica, from hip-hop to the neo-psychedelic rock of Tame Impala. Those who first discovered the Australian act through the breakthrough success of Currents will probably associate Tame Impala primarily with modern synth pop. But Kevin Parker's project began as a wonderfully psychedelic rock band, complete with a lazy vocal style that often brings to mind John Lennon during the Beatles' 1968 era. Everything about Inner Speaker breathes a retro atmosphere. The guitars are drenched in phasers and flangers, giving the songs that warm, swirling, psychedelic sound that defines the album. Over the following years, Tame Impala gradually moved towards a more accessible and electronic style, with Currents becoming the project's definitive global breakthrough. But for me, Inner Speaker remains the Tame Impala album I return to most often. At number 6, we find Michael Kiwanuka with the beautiful Home Again. It's an album that perfectly illustrates we're listening to an exceptional musician with an old soul. Understated acoustic songs are interwoven with lush string arrangements and a warm retro soul sound, often making Home Again feel as though it could have been recorded during soul music's golden age of the 1970s, when artists like Marvin Gaye and Isaac Hayes were taking the genre to new heights. With this debut, Kiwanuka immediately established himself as one of the most promising singer-songwriters of his generation. And he has more than lived up to that promise. Home Again was only the beginning. With every album that followed, his music became richer, more ambitious, and increasingly profound. An extraordinary talent. We've reached the top 5, where we find the first female artist in this ranking. That honor goes to none other than Caro Emerald. The Dutch singer enjoyed an international breakthrough in 2010 with a string of successful singles from this dream debut, which also wins the award for the best album title on this list, Deleted Scenes from the Cutting Room Floor. The retro-inspired cover immediately reveals where Caro draws her inspiration from. The white flower behind her ear evokes Billie Holiday, while the music blends jazz, swing, and modern electronic production into an irresistible style that became known as Electro-Swing. The hype surrounding that genre may have lasted only a few years, but 16 years later, this album still sounds remarkably fresh and timeless. This is music made for an elegant cocktail bar. Music that could just as easily have found its way onto the soundtrack of a James Bond film. Caro Emerald's warm, inviting voice is complemented by superb arrangements and outstanding production. It's hardly surprising that audiences across Europe embraced her so enthusiastically. Although Caro Emerald went on to release a second album, she never managed to match the phenomenal success of this debut. She later took a very different musical direction with her dream pop project, The Jordan, which felt far more personal and authentic than the image-driven Caro Emerald persona, but unfortunately reached a much smaller audience. These days, she performs under the name Caro by The Jordan. Whenever I revisit deleted scenes from the cutting room floor, one conclusion always remains the same. Caro Emerald deserves to be remembered as far more than a passing trend. This is simply an outstanding debut album. Perhaps the biggest surprise on this list comes in at number 4. In fact, I suspect some viewers have never even heard this album. And that's exactly why the Archandroid deserves a place in this series. With her debut, Janelle Monáe delivers one of the most ambitious albums of the past decade. From its orchestral overture, it's immediately clear that this is no ordinary record. Thanks to its artwork and overall structure, the Archandroid feels like a true concept album. But in the end, everything comes down to the music. And the music is simply phenomenal. Neo-soul, funk, R&B, pop, and orchestral arrangements flow effortlessly into one another. The production is inventive, the songwriting is consistently strong, and every listen reveals new details. For me, that makes this not only one of the finest debut albums of the 2000s, but perhaps also one of the most underrated. If you enjoy neo-soul with a more adventurous edge, Janelle Monáe comes highly recommended. Collectors who compare different pressings may notice one curious detail. The anniversary edition features a subtly redesigned hype sticker. A small change, perhaps, but a fascinating example of how even an album cover and its hype sticker can evolve with the times. The top 3 opens with British singer-songwriter Ben Howard. Every Kingdom became a worldwide success thanks to songs like Keep Your Head Up, The Wolves, and Only Love. Keep Your Head Up, in particular, felt like a musical arm around the shoulder for anyone who needed one. But behind those well-known singles lies an album with so much more to offer. Howard refuses to be confined by the conventions of the traditional singer-songwriter. He may not be as immediately radio-friendly as someone like Ed Sheeran, but musically, he's far more adventurous. His distinctive guitar playing, built around intricate finger-picking, open tunings, and subtle hammer-ons, gives the songs an identity all their own. Add his irresistible choruses, and you have an album that remains captivating from beginning to end. Howard's warm voice constantly shifts between restraint and release, giving every kingdom a beautiful dynamic that moves effortlessly from intimate acoustic reflections to soaring folk rock. Even the LP itself reinforces that timeless atmosphere. The vintage Pink Rim Island Records label instantly recalls the classic folk albums of artists like Nick Drake and John Martin. In the years that followed, Ben Howard became increasingly experimental, sometimes at the expense of accessibility. But any musician who continues to challenge themselves and explore new musical territory deserves nothing but admiration. His later albums may be less immediate, but they're all the more rewarding for it. Ben Howard is the kind of artist who would rather take risks than repeat himself. BBC television, an episode of Later with Jules Holland. A young woman in a simple dress, a large guitar slung over her shoulder. She begins to play her song No Room for Doubt. And within the first few lines, I'm completely won over. Her warm, velvety voice, her impeccable phrasing, the effortless way she gives every single word exactly the weight it deserves. Every once in a while, you come across an artist and instantly know this is something special. I've watched that performance countless times ever since. So when Lianne La Havas came to perform in my hometown shortly before the release of her second album, there wasn't a moment's hesitation. I simply had to be there. By then, I'd already played her debut, Is Your Love Big Enough?, to death. She opened the concert completely alone. Just her guitar, and no room for doubt. Within a minute, you could have heard a pin drop. A packed concert hall, listening in absolute silence. Those are the rare moments when you realize you're witnessing a truly exceptional artist. Curiously, the studio version of No Room for Doubt doesn't move me quite as much. On the album, it's performed as a duet with Willie Mason. Normally, I'm a huge fan of male-female duets. They often add another layer of emotion to a song. Here, though, I feel exactly the opposite. To my ears, Mason adds very little, and the song is at its most powerful when every ounce of attention is focused on La Havas' voice. Fortunately, that's only a minor footnote to an otherwise magnificent debut. Lost and Found is every bit as beautiful, while the opening track immediately shows that La Havas has far more to offer than delicate, introspective ballads. Soul, folk, jazz, and R&B flow effortlessly into one another without ever feeling forced. Perhaps that's the album's greatest achievement. Lianne La Havas was only 22 years old when Is Your Love Big Enough? Was released. Yet she never sounds like an artist still searching for her identity. Her lyrics are honest and perceptive. Her guitar playing is subtle yet virtuosic, always serving the song rather than overshadowing it. Everything revolves around the songs. Many debut albums hint at future greatness. Is Your Love Big Enough? Sounds like the work of an artist who knew exactly who she wanted to be from day one. Before we reveal number 1, there's one final honorable mention. Applause. The outstanding debut album by Belgian band Balthazar. It's an album that reveals more of its brilliance with every listen, thanks to its elegant arrangement, subtle sense of tension, and irresistible grooves. On Another Day, this record could easily have earned a place in the top 10. The fact that it remains an honorable mention says far more about the exceptional quality of the 10 albums that ultimately finished ahead of it than it does about applause itself. And finally, the number one on this 10 essentials list. Not Lana Del Rey's very first album, but the one that introduced her to the world. Her major label debut. The record that first invited millions of listeners into her unique musical universe. For me, it all began with video games. From the very first notes of the harp, I knew this was something different. This wasn't just another song you casually put on, it was a world you slowly disappeared into. The melancholy, the lush string arrangements, her low, almost whispered voice. Every element is steeped in atmosphere. Every now and then, you hear a song that isn't just beautiful, it creates an entire universe from the very first note. Video Games was one of those songs for me. It also became the gateway to an album where glamour and decay, Hollywood romance, and the darker side of the American dream constantly go hand in hand. A retro aesthetic captured in a thoroughly modern production. Strings, hip-hop beats, pop, trip-hop, and vintage influences merge effortlessly into a sound that felt completely unique in 2012. Lana Del Rey's voice wasn't universally embraced by critics. Some argued that her low, almost monotone delivery was too limited. But that's precisely where her greatest strength lies. She never tries to be the world's greatest vocalist. She sounds like no one else. Combined with her cinematic lyrics, filled with references to an America of a bygone era, she created a style that was instantly recognizable. Lana Del Rey has an old soul, and you can hear it in every note. Perhaps that's what impresses me most about Born to Die. It doesn't sound like the work of an artist still trying to find her voice. It sounds like someone who knew exactly who she wanted to be from day one. Musically, visually, and thematically, everything fits together perfectly. The songs, the production, the photography, the music videos, the entire aesthetic, they all belong to the same carefully crafted world. At a time when the charts were dominated by exuberant dance pop, Lana Del Rey chose melancholy, cinematic arrangements, and a sound that stood completely apart from the trends of the moment. In doing so, she became one of the defining artists of her generation, building an extraordinary body of work that, if the rumors are true, will be expanded once again with a new studio album later this year. Many debut albums merely hint at future greatness. Born to Die felt, from the very first harp notes of Video Games, like the work of an artist who had already found her place in pop history. And those were 10 essential debut albums from the 2000s and 10s. Which album from this list is your favorite? Or is there another debut record you think deserves a place? Let me know in the comments and vote in the poll. You can listen to the highlights from these 10 essentials, along with all the music featured in this series, through the Spotify playlist. And don't forget to check out the social media pages for updates, because I will follow you if you follow me. With this episode of 10 Essentials, we've now covered every decade from the 60s till the 2010s once. The Roaring 20s are still completely untouched, but next time we'll be heading back to the second part of the 1960s. And if you're a fan of Lana Del Rey, just like I am, be sure to check out my top 10 Lana Del Rey songs. Click the card to watch that video. Thanks for watching. See you next time. And in the meantime, drop the needle, press play, and remember, we're only in it for the music.